They asked me to park cars at my sister's wedding, so I arrived in the car I just bought from my tech startup exit. Let me tell you how it all went down. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to David Barn from Florida. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. When Chloe's wedding invitation arrived, it wasn't handwritten or sentimental. It was a forwarded email. Hey Nate, can you come a few days early to help out? Mostly parking stuff and organizing guests. You're good with that kind of thing, right? That was it. No, we'd love to see you. No acknowledgement that I was her only brother, just an assignment. I stared at the screen for a long minute. They never asked me to be part of things, only to be useful. That's when I knew I'd be showing up very differently. My family never quite knew what I did. Something with computers, they'd say. When I landed a $2.5 million seed round 3 years ago, no one even replied to the email I sent out. Not even a thumbs up. I told myself they were busy, too caught up in weddings, lake houses, and their carefully curated social lives. But I knew the truth. I wasn't their kind of success. I didn't play golf. I didn't smile wide in photos. I didn't belong on their fridge. Chloe was the golden child. Always had been. She got the spotlight, the praise, the double standards. When she crashed Dad's BMW at 17, they bought her a new one and told me to drive the old Camry. When I graduated from Stanford early, they gave me a congrats text. I built a company from scratch, but to them, I was still the quiet one with dark circles and mismatched clothes. I had to laugh because they thought the only thing I could bring to the wedding was parking. I replied to Chloe's email with a cheerful absolutely. Happy to help. That was the first move. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to protest. I'd learned long ago that it was better to play the part than fight for a role in a play I didn't write. What they didn't realize was that I'd sold my company 2 weeks before that email. 8 years of grind, 3 near burnouts, and hundreds of sleepless nights, and it paid off. 8 figures, clean. But they didn't know, and I didn't tell them. The wedding was set in Napa Valley, at a private estate with sweeping vineyard views and stone fountains. The kind of place you rent if you want to impress people who are already rich. I booked a hotel nearby, not bothering to ask if they'd reserved a room for me. I knew better. I rented a car for the first 2 days, a modest one. No one needed to see what I was bringing just yet. Revenge, when crafted properly, isn't loud. It whispers until it echoes. When I arrived, I was greeted by Chloe's voice. Nate, you made it. She hugged me like she hadn't just asked me to work. You don't mind doing valet, right? It's just for the rehearsal and wedding day. You'll get to talk to everyone. My mother chimed in. We just knew you'd be reliable. There it was. That word again, reliable. Not successful. Not impressive. Just reliable. Like a paperweight. I smiled and said, of course. Happy to help. But inside, something darker was taking root. They handed me a clipboard and a schedule. Not a tux, not a role in the ceremony, just logistics. Chloe's fiancé, Grant, barely looked at me when we shook hands. Appreciate it, man, he said, already walking away. I stood there in the courtyard, sunlight bouncing off champagne glasses and floral arches, and realized I didn't feel sad anymore. Just focused. Every insult was a blueprint now. Every slight was scaffolding. I wasn't just showing up to this wedding. I was staging something they'd never forget. That night, at the family dinner, I sat at the far end of the table next to 2 caterers and the event photographer. Chloe gave a toast and thanked everyone who helped bring this dream to life. She listed vendors, her planner, the florist. Not a word about me. Dad laughed when someone asked what I did for a living. He's a coder or something, he said. We keep trying to get him to fix our Wi-Fi. Everyone chuckled. I smiled with them. Revenge tastes better when served with wine and applause. After dinner, I walked out alone to the gravel lot behind the estate. My rental car sat beside a fleet of luxury SUVs. I looked up at the sky, clear, cold, perfect for what I had in mind. I opened the email confirmation on my phone. The delivery was scheduled for the morning of the wedding. Right on time. The engine note alone would turn heads. I imagined their faces already, jaw-dropped, confused, scrambling to understand how I, the family valet, could afford something like that. Let them wonder. Back in the guest house, I unpacked quietly. I had my laptop, my suit, and one very expensive key fob. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Wires confirmed. Final documents signed. I stared at the screen for a moment, then replied, "Perfect. We're ready." I lay down on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan spin above me. If this was going to be the last time I played the obedient brother, I was going to make it count. Not with noise. With silence, style, and precision. I closed my eyes and smiled. They thought they'd asked me to park cars. What they'd really done was hand me the stage. I'd forgotten what silence felt like until that night. Alone in the guest house, scrolling through hotel bookings, finalizing logistics on a screen that once held my survival. I remembered when that screen was everything, my only lifeline. 8 years ago, I was sleeping on a mattress in a friend's garage in Daly City, coding at 3 a.m. with frozen fingers and a borrowed hoodie. My startup back then was a dream duct taped together by hope and cheap coffee. I wasn't building something cool, I was surviving invisibility. Back then, I'd pitched to VCs with a voice that cracked from nerves and dehydration. Most of them didn't even look up from their phones. One of them once said, "You don't look like a founder." I still don't know what he meant. Maybe I wasn't wide enough, or tall enough, or loud enough. My family said the same thing in their own way. "You sure you don't want to try something more stable?" My mother would ask. "You're too quiet for business," Chloe once said. I remembered every word. The day I got my first $50,000 investment, I texted my dad. He replied 5 hours later. "Be careful with taxes. No congratulations, no proud of you." Chloe posted 3 selfies that day and got 800 likes. I kept going. I lived off ramen, skipped birthdays, burned relationships. But I made it work. My code started getting traction. My user base exploded. And eventually, I got an offer. 8 figures, clean. No earnout. No golden handcuffs. Just freedom. I signed it with a steady hand and didn't tell anyone. Especially not them. It wasn't about secrecy. It was about clarity. I needed to see how they treated me without the money. Without the power. I wanted to know who loved me without a balance sheet. Turns out, no one. That wedding invitation was my answer. They saw me as a servant, not a sibling. So now I was planning accordingly. I wasn't bitter. I was surgical. Revenge isn't rage. It's restraint. So I finalized the exotic car delivery, updated my private guest list, and wired payment for the aerial drone display. All under aliases. The deliveries were scheduled to arrive staggered. First, the matte black McLaren 750S, then the personalized champagne tower setup, then the drone contractor with custom-coded messaging. Each one perfectly timed, each one more extravagant than the last. No explanations, just appearances. I also edited the digital guest list to include several press contacts from local outlets, some with open secrets about Chloe and Grant's pasts. I wasn't just showing up. I was pulling every string I'd ever built from the shadows that left me in. The next morning, I walked the perimeter of the venue while guests were still asleep. I mapped exit points, watched where staff entered, noted where Chloe's planner had stashed the spare table cards. I knew every blind spot of the place. Chloe wanted perfection, flawless Instagrammable beauty. I was going to inject chaos through elegance. No shouting. No tantrums. Just whispers with megaphones. I rehearsed my entrance in my head, what I'd wear, what I'd say if anyone dared ask where I got the car. Spoiler, I wouldn't answer. Flashbacks hit me while I walked, of Chloe laughing with her friends after I dropped out of my corporate job to launch the company. "Oh, so you're unemployed?" She joked in front of 20 people. Mom chuckled too. I remember the burn in my chest, the fake smile I forced to keep the peace. But the truth was, I wasn't mad anymore. I was cold. Focused. There's a kind of power in watching the people who belittled you still think they're above you, especially when you own the ground they're standing on. That afternoon, I called my assistant and confirmed the final element, a donation made in Chloe and Grant's name to a cause they secretly hated. One that would go live during the wedding. One that couldn't be undone. The press release was scheduled. The timing was perfect. She'd smile for photos not knowing the caption underneath would read, Couple's controversial donation raises eyebrows amid wedding celebrations. And all she'd be able to say was, I had no idea. And she wouldn't. That was the point. As night fell, I reviewed everything again. Logistics, timing, backups. I wasn't just staging a moment, I was orchestrating a fall. The car was on its way, covered. The drones were programmed. The guest list was locked. All I had to do now was wait. I stared into the vineyard's darkness, the rows of grapes lit faintly by patio lights, and I felt still, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. I wasn't seeking validation anymore. I was building a monument to what they failed to see. At dinner, I wore the same plain jacket they always mocked. You look like you're going to a job interview at Best Buy, Grant joked. Everyone laughed. I smiled. Tomorrow, they'd see me in a tailored charcoal suit stitched in Milan. Tomorrow, they'd hear the whispers of what I really built. Tonight, I let them laugh. Let them believe their own lies for one more night. The quiet brother. The valet. The afterthought. Let them laugh, because tomorrow, I wasn't showing up to park their cars. I was showing up to take the wheel. The sun broke over Napa like it had something to prove. I arrived at the venue before anyone else, hoodie up, hands in pockets, moving like fog, unnoticed. The valet manager greeted me with a clipboard and a smirk, handing me keys like I belonged beneath everyone else. I played along. Hoodie, jeans, a soft smile. No one looked twice. No one noticed the stainless steel Patek on my wrist, worth more than the vineyard rental. That was the trick. Let them see what they wanted to see. I parked Bentleys and Teslas without flinching. I recognized some of the license plates, old money, fake smiles. Guests arrived in waves, complimenting the floral arrangements, gushing about Chloe's fairy tale aesthetic. Not a single person thanked me. One of Grant's friends tossed me his keys and said, "Don't scratch it, bud." I smiled and said, "Of course, sir." Inside, I was stitching every insult into the lining of my custom suit, one they hadn't seen yet. Every second was performance. Calm. Collected. Forgettable. From the sidelines, I watched Chloe float by in her designer gown, white as her sense of entitlement. Her eyes scanned the crowd, never stopping on me. Grant gave a speech, pompous and dull, filled with empty gratitude and false humility. My parents clapped like trained seals. No one asked where I was staying. No one cared. And that was perfect. Let them think I was still the failure they never quite claimed. The quiet one. The weird brother. Let them believe they still had me boxed in. At exactly 4:15, I handed off the last car and slipped into the changing room I had arranged in secret weeks ago. The stylist I flew in waited silently. I stepped into the charcoal-lined custom suit, tailored in Milan, fabric like smoke and shadow, shoes polished to a mirror, cufflinks engraved with the coordinates of the house they grew up in. The house I bought and gifted to strangers last month, just to erase the last piece of their history from under them. I tied the knot slowly. Downstairs, the reception buzzed. Champagne flutes clinked. Guests laughed too loud. I waited until the band struck the first chord of the couple's entrance music. That's when the McLaren rolled in, midnight black, matte finish, its engine purring like withheld rage. I stepped out slow, sunglasses on, the air bending around me like it had been waiting. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman near the photo booth gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I walked. Chloe's jaw unhinged like a dropped hinge. Grant blinked, confused, then squinted. My parents didn't speak, just stared, frozen in place like statues. I passed them all without a glance. Every step a metronome of memory. Years of mockery, dismissal, silence. Every footfall said, "You forgot me. I didn't forget you." I walked straight to the head table, placed my hand on the back of the groom's chair, and leaned down to whisper. "Move." Grant obeyed without a word. I sat, and still, I hadn't said a single line out loud. The tension in the room felt like a pulled wire. Chloe recovered first. "Nathan, what the hell is this?" Her voice wavered between confusion and something approaching fear. I looked at her for the first time all day. Really looked. The wedding makeup, the glint of diamonds. She was exactly who she'd always been, polished on the outside, hollow within. I leaned back in my chair, crossed one leg over the other, and replied coolly, You wanted a family memory, Chloe. I'm here to make sure no one forgets it. A murmur rippled through the guests. Phones rose in hands. People whispered names I hadn't heard in years, connecting dots they hadn't known were dots until this moment. Someone recognized the car. Someone else recognized the watch. I let the tension spread like ink in water. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about correction. A realignment. Chloe stood now, furious, cheeks flushed. You think this is funny? Hijacking my wedding. I stood too, towering over the fragile glass construct she called her ego. No, I said. I think it's necessary. I turned to the crowd, lifted a glass, and toasted with practiced detachment. To families who forget their own, and brothers who park cars instead of expectations. Laughter broke from one corner, nervous and startled. Chloe's eyes darted around, realizing too late that the moment had spun out of her control. A drone buzzed outside the glass ceiling, right on cue. It flew high, lights blinking. Then another joined, then 20. A synchronized dance above the vineyard. They spelled out one word, slowly, unforgotten. Gasps. Phones rose again. Chloe screamed at someone to shut it down. But there was nothing to shut down. It was already done. The drones faded into a glowing heart. I turned to my parents, who sat rigid and pale. You raised a shadow, I said. You forgot I had a shape. My mother opened her mouth, but said nothing. My father looked at his glass like he could sink into it. The weight of everything they hadn't said to me all those years crashed down in silence. I walked out the front doors while they were still frozen, the guests whispering behind me like I'd flipped their world on its side. The car waited, door up, engine humming like a satisfied animal. As I slid inside, I looked once over my shoulder. Chloe stood in her gown of lace and lies, mascara streaking, mouth moving but unheard over the roar. I shut the door, and the sound that followed wasn't just a door closing. It was a chapter slamming shut. I didn't look back again. The reception lights dimmed just as the MC tapped his mic. Glasses clinked in anticipation of the toasts, one of those saccharine traditions where people pretend words fix everything. Grant gave a half-hearted speech about Chloe's kindness and how family is everything. I almost laughed. My mother followed with a scripted tribute, dabbing her eyes like a stage actress. The applause was light, polite. They had no idea what was next. The MC asked, "Anyone else?" I stood. The room went quiet. I have something I'd like to say. I walked slowly to the center of the dance floor, a glass of champagne in one hand, the mic in the other. I could feel eyes on me. Curious, wary, confused. My voice rang clear. I'm Nathan, Chloe's brother. Or, as some of you might know me, the car guy. Nervous laughter trickled. My parents shifted in their chairs. Before I begin, I want to thank everyone. Not for being here, but for being honest in your dishonesty. See, I've spent my life as a ghost in this family. A few heads tilted, unsure. I gestured upward. The screen behind me flickered on. A black and white photo appeared. Me at 8 years old, standing in a family portrait, cropped at the edge. The next slide, my 12th birthday, no one showed up. Then came the audio, a voicemail from Chloe at 17. You're not coming to dinner, right? It's probably better. You make things weird. The crowd rustled. I scanned the room. I used to think it was my fault. I was too quiet, too awkward. But then I realized. I was just inconvenient. My father stood. Nathan, that's enough. I didn't flinch. Sit down, Dad. You had decades to speak up. You didn't. He hesitated, then sank back into his chair. I took another sip. Chloe asked me to park cars today. She said I was good at being invisible. Funny thing is, I've spent the last 10 years building something no one bothered to ask about. A company. A product. A team. Sold it 6 months ago. 8 figures. Quietly. I wanted to see if anything about me mattered, besides how useful I could be to others. Another click. The screen changed again, this time to bank statements, incorporation papers, headlines. Startup disruptor sells to Oracle. My name was there, bold and undeniable. Gasps echoed. I looked at Chloe, whose face had drained of all color. I could have told you, but I wanted to see who you all were when you thought I had nothing. Turns out, you were exactly who I remembered. I paused. Dismissive. Condescending. Cruel in the kindest ways. The room had fallen completely still. I smiled. I should thank you. Someone near the back muttered, holy shit. I continued. Because of all of you, your silence, your jokes, your indifference, I learned how to stand alone, how to build, how to survive in rooms colder than this one. I thought I was an outcast. Turns out, I was the only one honest enough to leave a burning house. Chloe stood now, voice shaking. You're ruining everything. Her heels clicked fast as she fled the room, dress flowing behind her like a ghost running from judgment. I didn't stop. Neither did the slideshow. Another recording played. My mother's voice. Nathan's not good with people. Maybe you should just keep doing tech stuff where no one sees him. I turned to the audience. This is what happens when someone disappears and comes back with receipts. My father rose again. Cut the damn feed. But the technician, whom I'd hired myself, just looked at me and nodded. The final slide appeared, a quote I'd written months ago. White text on black. You buried me in silence. I grew in the dark. I let the words hang. Then I lowered the mic. The silence was thick, suffocating. Then a few claps. Then more. Not everyone, but enough. Some faces looked horrified. Some moved by regret. Others just shocked. That was fine. This wasn't for them. It was for me. I raised my glass one final time. To families. May they teach us what not to become. I drained the champagne. The glass clinked hard against the table. And I walked off the stage, feeling lighter, sharper. Like truth had finally carved through decades of noise. As I reached the exit, I heard my name. My father again. Nathan, wait. I turned, not angry, just done. You had all my life to call me your son. You called me a valet instead. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I gave him one last look, not with hate, but detachment. I built a world without you, and it's better. Then I walked out the door, into the Napa air, where the McLaren waited under moonlight like a secret I no longer had to keep. The vineyard shimmered gold in the rearview mirror as I pulled away. The laughter and clinking glasses from Chloe's wedding faded behind me like a radio slowly losing signal. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I took the long way back through the hills, letting the silence fill the cabin of the McLaren. It wasn't about showing off anymore. The performance was over. What lingered now wasn't satisfaction, it was clarity. I hadn't burned bridges. I'd simply taken a different road, one they never imagined I could build. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. Just free. My foot eased off the gas as the road curved around a grove of cypress trees. I thought about my grandmother. Her voice, soft but steady, always telling me to keep my head down and my heart open. She never once called me a disappointment, even when everyone else did. I whispered a quiet thank you to the wind. If anyone deserved to share this moment, it was her. When I got home that night, I didn't even take off my shoes. I walked straight into my office, flicked on the soft overhead lights, and opened my laptop. The plan had been in motion for months, but I'd waited for this moment to finalize it. The Nathan C. Foundation for Quiet Creators, named not after me, but for her. C for Celeste. It would fund tech education for overlooked kids in broken homes, kids like I used to be. It was more than charity. It was a message. You don't need their approval to build your own world. My phone buzzed for the 100th time that hour. Chloe. Then Dad. Then a string of texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all stunned at my reveal. Funny how people suddenly remembered your name once you became useful or viral. I turned the phone over, screen down. Their noise didn't matter. They weren't reaching out because they cared. They were trying to drag me back into a role I'd finally left behind. I had no interest in playing the family fool anymore. I poured a glass of scotch and sank into the leather chair beside my window. Outside, San Francisco blinked to life beneath a velvet sky. It looked the same as it did when I was broke and unknown, typing lines of code at 3 a.m. But I was different now. Not because of the money. Because I'd stopped needing validation. That was the real escape. The real revenge. Not making them hurt, but showing myself I didn't need them to feel whole. I opened YouTube, curious. It didn't take long to find it. Someone had uploaded a shaky video of my wedding toast, complete with gasps and stifled laughter. The caption read, "Billionaire brother drops truth bomb at sister's wedding." It already had 1 million views. I watched for a few seconds, saw my own calm face on stage, heard my voice laying it all out, and felt nothing. No pride. No shame. Just peace. I closed the tab. Before I logged off, I clicked into the Foundation's domain and hit launch. The site went live instantly, with a tribute page to Grandma Celeste. Her photo smiled back at me, gentle, proud. That was the applause I'd been chasing all along. Not the cheers of strangers, or the gasps of those who once mocked me. Just the quiet nod of someone who truly saw me, even when I was invisible to the rest. I thought about Chloe's face when I walked past her in the McLaren. I remembered Dad's stunned silence during the toast and Mom's tight grip on her champagne flute. They weren't angry. They were exposed. For years they'd underestimated me, reduced me to the weird tech kid who didn't fit the family mold. Now they couldn't pretend anymore. And the best part? I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to yell. I just had to show up. The messages kept pouring in. We didn't know. Why didn't you say something sooner? Can we talk? I deleted them all, not out of spite, but because they weren't necessary. My answer had already been given. On stage, in the silence, in the drive away. They built a version of me that served their comfort. I'd let it die that night, and I had no intention of resurrecting it. At midnight, I stepped out onto my balcony. The city buzzed below, distant sirens, car horns, laughter from a nearby rooftop. I took a deep breath of the cool night air and exhaled slowly. This was my world now. A place I built with no applause, no spotlight, just effort and belief. I didn't need the family's acceptance anymore. Their opinions were no longer currency. Their attention, no longer valuable. Back inside, I picked up my phone one last time. Opened the video again. Watched it play for a second. The applause, my calm delivery, Chloe's gasp. Then I smiled. Just once. A quiet, final smile. And pressed delete. They thought I was the valet. I was the owner all along. If you connected with this story and want more like it, about betrayal, quiet revenge, and the kind of healing that doesn't look like victory, subscribe to the channel. I share stories that cut deep and stay with you.